Okay, you're all set.
Welcome everyone to our second and final career development hours for this fall semester. We're excited again to have our guest, Karla Reyes from Dream.Co Institute, answer any career development questions that you have during this next hour. And before we introduce Karla, I'm just going to share a few upcoming career development events that we have planned. All right, so as mentioned, this is our final career development hour that's happening right now for the next hour. So feel free first to put in the chat, introduce yourself, your name, what partner college you're attending, your major. Also on top of that, feel free to type in any career development question you may have, whether it's how to start your own business, maybe learning more about entrepreneurship, what career options do you have based off of your work authorization status. Also want to give a quick reminder that we also have our final Tax Matters hours that is also happening this week on Thursday from 2 to 3 p.m. Pacific time. Professor Francine Lippman is an expert in tax law and taxation of business entities. So if you have any questions about ITINs and EINs, or what is an ITIN? An ITIN can be a powerful tool to have in your toolkit, especially if you don't have work authorization, that can open income generation options for you, such as independent contracting and freelancing. If you have any other tax-related questions, such as general tax questions or business taxes, if you're looking into starting your own small business, we highly encourage you to attend that event taking place this Thursday. Also, just want to highlight that we did have a past summer career series, and all of those recordings are on YouTube. So if you go to the TheDream.Us YouTube channel, you'll find 5 of our summer career series recordings. Karla was leading 2 of them, and these are very helpful career topics, such as what options do you have as an undocumented student without work authorization, how to develop an entrepreneurial mindset, and so forth. The last thing I'm going to mention before we kick it over to Karla is we will be having a Teach for America info session next week on Tuesday, November 15th. Everyone should have received emails beforehand about Teach for America opportunities. They're paid opportunities, and one of them is open to all of our scholars, regardless of work authorization. And that is the Teach for America Ignite Fellowship. So if you have a valid Social Security number or an ITIN number, you are eligible to apply for the paid intern Ignite Fellowship, And then the other opportunity that Teach for America will be talking about is their Teach for America Core Membership Program, which is a 2-year post-graduation program that does require work authorization. These opportunities are open to scholars, all majors. And if you are interested in attending, we encourage you to attend the webinar next week. So with that said, I'll stop sharing my screen and I will have Karla, our guest today, briefly introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karla Reyes Noguera, and I'm very happy that you all have joined us, and I can't wait to hear your questions. So I've been doing this work since 2007. Where I've been working with undocumented students and undocumented entrepreneurs since 2007. I went to Mills College to get my MBA and to learn more about entrepreneurship. And that's a little bit about me. I'm also a mom with a sick baby right now. And so she might make an appearance. She made the appearance sooner than I thought she was going to. But I'm excited to hear the questions. And we already have one, Nicole, but we'll start with yours or we'll start with that one. Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's up to you.
So, let's go ahead first and ask some of our introductory questions, and then we'll answer questions that come from the chat. So first of all, Karla, I think setting the stage is if you want to briefly talk about what career options are open to our scholars with work authorization through DACA and TPS. And a follow-up to that is what things should they be considering or knowing when they look for career options, knowing that they have work authorization?
Good question. So the simplest answer is basically if you have work authorization, you have access to most options of work that are employee based. So you can be an employee anywhere, except there might be some jobs, whether it's like with the federal government or with for-profits. I've seen this in for-profits where they actually require you to be a US citizen. So, and these are usually like contract job, like jobs that have money coming down from like the federal government that require some sort of like, yeah, they have that stipulation that you have to be a US citizen in order for you to be able to work at that institution or for that project. This could be at a university, although not always, right? I've seen it as some of the like Lockheed Martin, like some engineering contracts. I've also seen it. I'm thinking about like IBM, and it's not that they don't hire folks that are immigrant. It just sometimes, depending on where the money's coming from, that might be a requirement. But other than that, I mean, if you have work authorization, then it's pretty fair game. Yeah.
Great, and that's interesting that you mentioned Lockheed Martin, Karla, because my colleague Melanie and I recently took about 60 of our scholars to the SHIP conference where Lockheed Martin was there and other engineering or STEM focused businesses were also attending. And like you said, for those scholars that have work authorization, they have a number of options available to them, except if they require US citizenship, security clearance. I know Lockheed Martin, a lot of their opportunities do require security.
Yeah, that's what that is. Although even some jobs, you can still get a security clearance with DACA. It's just depending on the level that it needs to be at. Okay, so like there's a lot of folks, for example, that I worked with early in my career that were going into child development, childcare, and they needed to get fingerprinted. So because you're working with children or at a school or at a site like that. So what will happen is that you could still get fingerprinted. I mean, the same way that you get fingerprinted for DACA, for example. Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. Thank you. So I also wanted to ask for our scholars that don't have work authorization through DACA or TPS, what career options are available to them? And Karla, you muted yourself, or maybe your daughter did.
No, I did. I thought I had unmuted myself. So so one of the things that I've started telling my clients and students is that the only option you don't have actually is getting a job, like a traditional employment job. Other than that, you can be a consultant, business owner, entrepreneur, investor. You can, I'm trying to think about all the other titles that I've seen, but the only thing you cannot do is get a traditional I-9 job. And so I think that's a reframing that I've been trying to do, because I think it's important for folks to know that there's other options. So again, investor, you can be a consultant, you can be what was the other, independent contractor, you can be an entrepreneur. I mean, all of these things are available to you as money or income generating opportunities that are not just the traditional job. Does that, I think it's, so it just clicked. Like one day I was like, wait, but that's like the only thing we can't do, or I couldn't, when I was undocumented, like that was the only thing that was not available to me. And it's, unfortunately, we're still in that situation. So that's the way that I would reframe it. So there are other options.
Yeah, no, and thank you for listing out those options for scholars joining us. What advice would you give to our scholars without work authorization? How would they go about starting to find those opportunities like freelancing or independent contracting or wanting to start their own business? Where would you suggest they start?
I would say start with creating an inventory of your skill set, knowledge, and abilities, because that is going to be the easiest thing for you to sell, right? And so I would say start there, and then figure out who else is doing something like that in the space without being an employee. So if, for example, I'm just like a really great, right now, one of my clients is actually going to be opening up her own lab. She's got a degree in, and now I can't remember exactly what it is. It's in STEM, but she's actually starting her own laboratory, and she's going to be providing consulting services. And that's what she's been trained to do. And she's been doing this work for free for a couple of years, unfortunately, before she met me. And she's part of our program now, through the California Dream Fund. But you know, think about what you train to do. Think about what you're training to do, whether it's like through your education or even outside of your degree. But I would start there. What are you good at? What can you offer the work in the workforce, and what can you offer as a professional? That would be my first place to start. And then the second piece would be take a look at who's already doing something in that space, but not as an employee.
Yeah, no, very good advice. Thank you. Now we'll go into asking questions from the chat, and scholars attending, feel free, if you haven't already, to introduce yourself in the chat and or ask any career development related questions you have, and Karla will answer them for you. The first question I see in the chat, let me go back up, is one scholar lost their physical work permit card and might be required to show proof of eligibility for employment for a new job soon. What can they do?
So number one, try to request one through the USCIS. So USCIS has a process for you to request a lost card or a misplaced card. So do that as soon as possible, because you're going to need it. I mean, essentially, you're going to need it. But the other thing that I would do is I would talk to HR and let them know I have misplaced my EAD card, and what could I provide? Could I provide a copy of it? You know, so I think you need to do both of those things. Make sure that you talk to them and let them know that this is what happened, and that maybe you let them know, like, I'm already in the process of applying for another one. You know, what could be an alternative? And so I think that would be like the two steps that I would recommend you take. But definitely look at the USCIS website to see what the requirements are for you to apply for another one. And those, you should be able to get a second one.
Thanks, Karla, for answering that question. Another question that came in is, and I know we briefly talked about this at the beginning, but can you provide more information on where undocumented students without work authorization, what opportunities they have, and where can they find them?
Yeah. So once you've determined what services you want to offer, I would say, well, definitely refer back to the workshops that we provided earlier this year. There's definitely a lot of content and information there that we go in depth about what you could do. But I would say, okay, if you want to go into consulting or contracting, I would encourage you to look at Indeed as a resource, or like even LinkedIn. There's many contract jobs that are listed. And so if there is a company or an organization that you want to work for, reach out to them and ask them if they have any contract work available. This usually works better for medium or small institutions or organizations. The bigger ones have a lot more restrictions. Sometimes they even hire out, what is it called? Staffing agencies to go through their process, and staffing agencies basically will just hire employees, and they don't have a lot of flexibility. But if you contact them directly, you could ask. Like, I would encourage you to definitely do that. Like, go on Indeed, search for possible contracts, and I usually like show my clients, like, you can, like, the search engine itself actually lends itself so that you can search for listings that are specifically contract based. I would say have really great solid resume, cover letter, email templates, like all of the pieces that you need to have ready in order to pitch your, and I don't say I like apply to the job, I say like pitch your services to the organization or institution. And that would be like a good place to start as a contractor or consultant. Now, if you're looking for example, an internship, pick 5 to 10 organizations or institutions that you want to apply to and build those relationships out, because sometimes what will happen is it's about who you know. And remember, you don't always have to disclose your situation. And I would actually suggest that you don't right off the bat say, hey, I'm undocumented, like, could you hire me as an independent contractor? Because then you're putting the HR person in a situation where they know you're undocumented, and they may or may not have some feeling about it, right? And so you just want to say things like, I would love to work for you and in this capacity as an independent contractor. I hope that was helpful. I mean, there's definitely, like, we have content on this, like the workshop, like I go into depth about like contracts and like what to say, what to do, but like this would be a good place to start. I would say, and sometimes you're going to be the first one, a trailblazer in the space, if nobody else has been able to, what is it called? If nobody else has done this in the space. Like, there's a lot of people in nonprofit who do nonprofit consulting, a lot of people in education. In the STEM areas, I feel like it definitely hasn't been as explored as it, or at least people haven't been as vocal, but there's definitely undocumented professionals who have been working in the space. So we kind of just need to share those stories eventually.
Yeah, definitely. And I know my colleague Melanie shared in the chat earlier a link to our summer career series where, Karla, you talked about some of these things, and including independent contracting. I'll also share a link shortly too to an independent contracting webinar Melanie and I hosted for our SHIP scholars recently, where she talks about how she's able to find independent contract work as a fully undocumented person, and we'll share that in the chat. And thank you also for talking about using Indeed or LinkedIn to search for contract type work. I wanted to ask you about Upwork, and if you've utilized that, or if you've shared that with your clients on how using Upwork can be a great exploration tool for what services you could potentially provide as a new independent contractor, or how you should sell your services. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think and again, it depends on what kind of services you're going to be offering, but I think utilizing all these databases, and I'll tell you, like, years ago before the pandemic, it wasn't as, I would say, like, it wasn't as common to be an independent contractor, a consultant, an entrepreneur. And I think post-pandemic, like, we've just seen like an uprise of entrepreneurial spirits. And so, like, you're going to be in good company if you're going to be utilizing these platforms. And it's a learning process. Like, give yourself the time to learn how to pitch your products and services, or your skill set. Right? Like, you're going to have a learning curve. There is going to be a process. You're going to need to learn how to talk, how you feel comfortable talking about yourself, right? And pitching those ideas, but utilizing platforms like Upwork, Indeed, even just like your email and LinkedIn, like, it's definitely a good tool to have just in general for your profession, for sure. Yeah.
Yes, yes, agreed. And then I also wanted to ask, I have a private message that came to me. How do I go about branding myself as an independent contractor, or when to do this in the job application process?
So sorry, can you repeat that, Nicole?
Yeah,
I got distracted in the chat.
no worries.
Sorry, I'm gonna close it.
No worries. How do I go about branding myself as an independent contractor, or when to do this in the job application process?
Okay, so if assuming you're applying for a position that is already an independent contractor position, you would just clarify, you would just apply as an independent contractor, or they usually have a different process, but I'm going to assume that you're thinking about applying to a job, and maybe they could clarify, to a job that's posted as an employee position. Okay. So first, before even, you could submit all of your like cover letter, your resume, and all of that. I simply, my suggestion to my clients and students is just say, I am interested in this position and working for you as an independent contractor, not as an employee. And that's it. Like, is that a possibility? Like, I think the more you go into detail about why and all of that stuff, like, unless you know them and you have a relationship with them, which sometimes could happen, or with the organization, I would say just start with that question. Like, is that even a possibility? Right. And yeah. And so they might say yes, they might say no, or they might ask more questions, and then you can elaborate. But that would be my suggestion. Like, you pitch your services, and in your email or in your cover letter, you talk about, you address that right away. Because one thing that I'm seeing is a lot of students are wasting a lot of time, right? Like I'm not saying wasting, but like it takes a long time to apply for a position and to build that relationship, and to and to polish the resume, or to all that. Like, that's a lot of time and effort. So you want to have it be focused, instead of like just sending out, like 25 different resumes to be tailored. It cuts the timing in half. So I would just say you can frame yourself, number one, as a contractor or consultant, you need to have some level of expertise. And so know what you bring to the table. If you know what you bring to the table, it's going to be easier to pitch that as an opportunity. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, I think you did, and I'll let you know if they privately message me back.
Okay.
And then to follow up about independent contracting or employment-based opportunities, can you explain what's the difference between, or how do I know if something is employment-based or as an employee type position versus independent contracting?
Okay, so if you're looking, for example, at Indeed or any of these postings, it'll clearly state that it's an employee position. And sometimes what it will say is that you need work authorization to apply. So oftentimes, like if you're looking at a job posting. Now, the IRS has real clear set of rules about what an employee is versus an independent contractor. And so you want to go to the IRS website, and you can just like search independent contractor, and it'll have like a list of what those requirements are. Usually, as an independent contractor, you have more dominion over your work and over the tools of your work and how you deliver that work. And so you want to be mindful of that, because one thing that I am seeing, and I have seen before, is that organizations or institutions or businesses will turn an employee position into a contractor position, but still expect the person to be working as an employee. So you want to be well versed about what those differences are before you pitch that idea, because the last thing you want to do is be paid as an independent contractor, but be expected to work as an employee. Now, and just in general, what will happen is that as an independent contractor, you will have something like a scope of work, a list of what services you're actually offering, and deliverables you're actually offering to the client. So it's a different type of relationship that I would say definitely refer back to the resources that were already mentioned.
Thanks, Karla.
I think Gabby
And
has her hand up.
yes. Gabby, do you have a question?
Hey, I just wanted to kind of give also my 2 cents on the previous question. But I think one of the things that also we need to think about as immigrants, undocumented students, dreamers, whatever the term you want to use, but while there is some negatives, right, which being undocumented, you don't have the work authorization and you have to find alternatives, there is strength in being able to say things like, especially because a lot of organizations are now talking a lot more about DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so using the fact that you are an immigrant, many people are bilingual, right? And talking about that and talking about, diversifying the businesses or organizations workforce by bringing you in as an independent contractor that can provide a different lens, that can provide just a wealth of information and knowledge from the immigrant perspective is always good too. So think about, what are the strengths that you as an immigrant have and everything that you have gone through, your family, et cetera. And those experiences are really important in the workforce, right? And so also, I think that that's one of the key things. And then a lot of the times, and today, right, there is support in the overall general economy on businesses that are owned by immigrants or women. And so use that to your advantage and talk about that too, right? Say, I'm a small business, I'm an independent contractor that is women owned or that is minority owned. So use the trends and the things that are happening right now also to your advantage.
And Gabby, that was beautifully said. I think definitely knowing and understanding what you bring to the table is important, including that part of your story, right? That part of your story and your skill set and your your lens, right? And so being able to articulate that well on a cover letter and on a resume takes some skill. So I would even suggest if you have to hire somebody to do that part, to help you bring all of these, everything together, do that. It's a good investment so that you feel confident moving forward with your with reaching out to organizations and institutions. But that was, yeah, absolutely. And I would say, like Gabby said, formalize your business, get that LLC or get that business registered and get a business name, go all out. Because if you're looking to make a career out of this, clients are going to want to see that you're serious about your business and about your skill set. And I've seen, even now that I've been using Indeed as a tool for contract searching for my clients. Some of them will list out this needs to be the professional needs to have an LLC and the appropriate insurances for that particular job or for that particular contract or as a service provider. So I think when you have your ducks in a row with regard to that, then you're going to feel confident moving forward and letting people know that you're providing these services. So formalize your consulting business. Yeah.
Thanks, Karla, for sharing. And thanks, Gabby, for sharing as well. Going back to, I guess, if I'm a scholar that's just starting out and wanting to start my own business or do independent contract work, but don't necessarily know, well, what service can I provide or what should my business be? Can you give some examples in working with past undocumented clients what are some services that they've provided or small businesses that they've created?
They're all over the place. So we're looking at like photography. I had one client who was building who has he sells a business selling Lego parts. Like some are providing consulting professional services to nonprofits. Others are tutoring. I mean, I'm really excited about this lab my client is creating and can't wait to share more about that. Creating apps. I mean, it's like, it basically is all over the place. I know in the past have provided public relations services. When I was undocumented, I did that. I mean, it was just, you have to think about, yeah, just like what your skill set is and what you can bring to the table, right? And don't be concerned with like how much experience you have or don't have. I would say it really is about how you market yourself and how you brand yourself. But those are some examples. I'm trying to think about what else I've seen more recently. I have one client who's studying computer science. We brainstorm like 10 different things she could do and learn. But obviously, like those 10 things, like she's like, I'm gonna explore these 3. I'm gonna get my first clients in these 3 things and see what I like to do. Right. It also has to do if there's a market for it. So that might also be the case. But I mean, even product-based businesses, some of my undocumented folks have had products that they sell. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Nicole? I think it's
Yeah, it does. Lego parts, that sounds neat. Photography. I was telling one of my colleagues the other day, I recently-ish was married a few years ago, and doing a photography business or wedding planning.
wedding.
But there is a follow-up question in the chat. If there's any advice for career services professionals working with younger college students who are starting the process of gaining professional skills and juggling coursework.
Well, be intentional. I would say, like, keep in mind that whether you're undocumented or not, the workforce, like, and I don't know if you as a career services professional have seen this, but like you have to have practical skills, right? To be in any field, like you have to learn how to apply whatever it is you're learning in the classroom. And specifically for undocumented folks and documented folks with this uncertainty, you've got to figure out how you're going to be able to churn out a service or a product from what you learn in school. So the earlier you do that and you start practicing it, the better. So my advice would be that you support them and create maybe opportunities where they could provide services and start building their resume, where they can develop a product and they could, like, for example, I did that, and some of my clients have done this through the workforce credits. So even if it's an unpaid internship, which I'm never going to advocate for unpaid work, but if it could be tied to like a scholarship or something like that, but actually having a product or a service, like, is going to be so valuable on their resume, because they're going to need to show that they can apply the skill set, right? And so they're going to be so much more successful once they graduate if they have a portfolio of things they've done. I mean, if they're doing web development or they're studying something like that, could they volunteer to update a website for a local nonprofit, right? Like, and maybe ask for a little bit of money for it, like as a consultant or independent contractor. But like sometimes you as a career services professional are going to have to broker, not sometimes, most of the time, like that brokers that position or relationship. Like you can leverage your position as the career service professional to be able to say, hey, like I've got this student who needs to do a project.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And I like Karla, what you mentioned earlier about how career services practitioners or any college practitioner can create inclusive opportunities so that our scholars can participate in and be eligible. So I'm thinking career services, inclusive fellowships or internship funds. That's something that at TheDream.Us, we're working with our partner colleges, and we already have a lot of institutions that are already creating these inclusive opportunities that serve all students, including our undocumented students as well. One thing that I also thought of, and then I'll kick it back over to you, Karla, but one other thing that I mentioned too for our career services practitioners on the line, Parker Dewey is a online resource that has micro internships structured as independent contract work. So they provide paid opportunities that are inclusive to undocumented students, so long as they have a valid social security number or a valid ITIN number. And it's also open to graduate students as well, or those that have graduated, but that's something I would definitely encourage if you're not connected to Parker Dewey to look into them and partner with them at your institution.
Very cool. One thing that I was going to add is that I find that many students don't know how to talk about their coursework as or like their projects as professional like work. So I think if we could support them in learning how to communicate, like, you know, I did X, Y, and Z. Yes, as a project for school, but like these are the skills that I learned while creating this project. So I know that juggling coursework and building professional skills, like it's a lot of work. And honestly, like having experienced that, that process as an undocumented student, both in college and grad school, like it's really hard to try to keep up and like kind of like validate yourself while you're juggling all these emotions and work and school and all of these things. But it's really important to do. And I think in many ways, once I learned how to do that, I actually was ahead of the game with most of my contemporaries or my classmates, because I had to learn how to do that and speak about, you know, and speak about my class projects, and then also just kind of like take contract work, even though I didn't necessarily have the professional experience to be able to do it. But then again, like Gabby mentioned, like I learned how to talk up my skills about, you know, just PR. Like I had to do that because that's the way that I would get work, but it's a skill, right? So I think teaching or supporting students and learning how to talk about their coursework and their class projects as professional work is important as well.
Yes, I totally agree. And that also makes me think of highlighting your experiences from high school or amongst your community with your family members. You know, a lot of times we'll have scholars that said, oh, well, I help out my mom and dad do this, or I've tutored at my high school and volunteered there for a semester or two. Those are experiences that you can definitely highlight as well, and you should. Because those are developing your soft skills or your people skills that can help you for any opportunity you look at going into. So I do have another direct message question. And that question is, I want to take my hobby of baking into a side hustle. Are there any resources I can be directed to?
Absolutely. Small business development centers in your area. Like they are an amazing resource. They provide free workshops and training for entrepreneurs. They don't require a social security number. They're usually the first ones also to know if there's any funding through your state that is going to be made available to entrepreneurs. So I would say start there. They also have an amazing website with like the 10 steps to start a business. They also have a bunch of information specifically like for women-owned businesses or for specific industries. So I would say start getting engaged with your local small business development center and your local chamber of commerce. And depending on where you live, there might also be other organizations that serve your population. So whether it's women or like however you self-identify in starting a business. But I think the SBDC is definitely a good place to start.
Yeah, and I just put a link in the chat for everyone where you can find your local small business development center. Some SBDCs are actually connected to some larger universities and colleges. So you can see if maybe if your university is connected to the Small Business Development Center. And I think this is a good transition into a next question that I've been thinking about and has been asked by a past scholars is, what resources can a scholar look at on campus or in their community to help them with entrepreneurship or starting their own business?
If you go to a university or a college where they have this link to the SBDC, like that would be a good place to start. But if not, even just taking a marketing class or an entrepreneurship class is going to add so much to your repertoire of skills and just like understanding. But it has to be, it has to be a very practical class. So I would say like entrepreneurship and look at the curriculum. What do they teach you? What do they not teach you, right? Like what should you expect? Because it has to be very practical. I think in entrepreneurship, the same as like in any career, you have to do it in order for you to be able to have that experience, but you also want to have some guidance and support. So I would say that would be a good place to start. Your entrepreneurship club or organization, like, and the thing is, just be on the lookout, because many business schools, if you go to a school that has a business schools are really training you to work for somebody else. I mean, I think that there's a big misconception most of the time, unless you're taking an actual entrepreneurship course or an innovations in business course, like take a look at the curriculum, because oftentimes they're training you to work for somebody else. And what you want to learn is how to work for yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Karla, for that information. That's helpful to our scholars about finding resources on your campus or taking a course like entrepreneurship, marketing. That also reminds me of a free self-paced resource about entrepreneurship or starting your own business through Immigrants Rising. They have their Spark curriculum, which I will be putting in the chat shortly for those of you interested in taking a look at that. So
yeah, that's an excellent resource, but definitely connect with your local, like, other entrepreneurs, like build community around it, because entrepreneurship can be a very lonely place if you're just starting out. So there's a lot of resources luckily now available. I think we might have skipped a question, Nicole. I think I saw it from Catherine. Would anyone have any information for undocumented students? Where can we get them work? Well, we kind of answered it, right? Like it was like.
Yes, you were very helpful. Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. There we go.
Well, glad that we are caught up in the questions in the chat. We'll pause. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or also feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. And one other thing too, I wanted to mention earlier, and I will also add in the chat, is a guide that TheDream.Us recently created for our scholars that attended a professional conference. And it's how to navigate a career fair as an undocumented student without work authorization. So I'll put that link in the chat, but it also talks about, understanding what independent contracting is, what's the difference between an employment-based opportunity versus independent contracting or 1099, the different types of forms. Karla, you mentioned earlier an I-9, understanding what an I-9 is, and if you have to go, or if you have to complete an I-9, that's a signal to you that that is employment-based opportunities where you'd be hired on as an employee. And if you don't have work authorization, unfortunately, that's something that you wouldn't be eligible for in applying. But I will put that link in the chat if any of our attendees are interested in reviewing that document as well. And Karla, while I'm doing that, are there any other maybe questions or common questions you receive from your clients that maybe we missed and you would want to talk about?
We covered most of them. I'm thinking about just, I think in more recent years, one thing that I keep saying to my clients, actually this year, I would say, is that seek out resources and, don't be afraid to apply for grants, for example, for your business. I know that I recently saw like Tory Burke had provided free workshops for entrepreneurs. Like, get yourself, like, you're not just an undocumented person. You're an entrepreneur or like an entrepreneurial person. And I think when you start thinking about how to advance in your career through entrepreneurship or small business ownership or even consultancy, like, don't be afraid to go out there and look for money, especially grant money. It's the same way that you apply for scholarships. Like, try to find like resources to fund your business without necessarily feeling like you can't, right? Because you're undocumented. And the thing is, like, at least, yeah, there's so many different resources out there that don't require you to be a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident. It won't say that. It won't say you don't have to be a legal permanent resident or U.S. citizen, but it just won't ask you those questions. So I would say I want to encourage folks to apply to grants. I know there's so many big companies that have these, they provided all of these grants, grant opportunities or even training opportunities for entrepreneurs. And I would say, I think as an immigrant entrepreneurs and undocumented entrepreneurs were underrepresented, especially undocumented entrepreneurs. So like, be in that space. Like, you deserve to be in that space. You don't have to share your story if you don't feel comfortable. But I would say go out there and seek those resources. A lot of the times they go underutilized as well, just in general. So I don't know if that's one thing that I've been encouraging my clients, because I do want folks to take advantage of all of those financial resources that are available for starting your own business, because it does take money, right? Like, you do need some resources to be able to like register your business, apply for insurance, like buy your equipment. So if you need it, I would say apply the same way you've been funding your education.
No, thanks for touching on that, because finances is a big part of starting your own business and becoming an entrepreneur. Do you have any other resources or advice for our scholars on funding or finding funds to start their own business?
I would say definitely look at your state to see what they've provided for startups, specifically post-pandemic, because I know a lot of states actually, like, their businesses suffered, so they're providing grants or resources available. So I would say start there, start at the state. then you could look at some, I mean, you could do a search on, what grants are available to small businesses or small business owners of color. Sometimes, and I've seen this in the last couple of years too, like there's organizations that are being started to support like women in business, right? And even celebrities, like I've recently seen J-Lo like provide all of this money to small business owners. And I'm like, that is so cool. I'm a big fan. So, and so I think that that's a good place to start. But I think you do have to have an idea of what you want to offer. And then you'll start getting yourself like engaging in that space, and then you'll start getting the information, right? But I mean, I also would say, like, don't be afraid to like get, seed money from your family members. Like if you have a good idea, learn how to pitch to your family members, like, and I know, like, at least in Mexican culture, like we have this thing called a padrino, right? Or a madrina, like a godparent who can help you, like, who usually helps you like through your quinceañera or your party. Like I would say, if you need $1,000 for, to pay your domain for your website, like this is like, I think it's only going to benefit everybody if you start a business or if you get ahead in your career, because you're going to be able to contribute so much more. So I would say, like, I know that's really unconventional advice, but I would say that. And I am kind of biased because I live in California, and I know we have actually gotten a lot of resources for entrepreneurs, but I'm sure there's other resources available in other states that are actually being underutilized. So just ask, right? Like your local SBDC and like ask what is available.
Yes, definitely. The SBDC is a great way to find out if there's any funds that you are eligible for. And as Karla mentioned, don't be afraid to ask family members or friends. I was at a conference recently, and I think it's a good percentage. I want to say about 30 or 40% of small businesses, they ask family members and friends for startup money, and know that that's a resource that you can tap into. So I see that we have about 5 minutes left. So if you have any last burning questions, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself. And then while we are waiting to see if there's any final questions, I will remind everyone that if you are interested in attending our Tax Matters Q&A, it is happening this Thursday, November 10th from 2 to 3 p.m. Pacific time. For those of you that are interested in wanting to start your own business or doing independent contracting work and freelance work, and if you are undocumented, having an ITIN is something that you will need to help you generate income and start up your business. So this would be a great webinar for you to attend. And then lastly, too, next week, we are also having that Teach for America webinar a week from today, 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific time. And they will be talking about 2 paid opportunities that they're currently recruiting for and have applications open. One of them, their Ignite Fellowship, is open to all of our scholars, regardless of major and regardless of work authorization status. So long as you have a social security number or an ITIN number, you would be eligible to apply. So if you're interested for that session, we hope to see you there.
Nicole, that reminds me, you can start a business with your ITIN. So that's important to know. Like, you can start a business and file your taxes with an ITIN as a business owner. You can hire people as a business owner. You can also apply for credit using your ITIN number, which is something a lot of people don't know. And so I would say, start building your credit. So because if you start building your credit early on, you'll be able to have access once you like decide to grow your business, whether it's that's buying more equipment or hiring staff or doing your own thing. And that actually kind of like leads me to saying, you can do your own thing, right? Like many people do their own thing in your field and make your mark that way. You don't have to be somebody's employee to be an extraordinary professional, right? And I think that that's important for you to know.
Well, with that, Karla, as always, we appreciate your time with us today and your cute, wonderful daughter. I don't know if she has any career advice for all of us.
Just like, watch out for your first year of daycare. You'll be out sick 1 week per month.
Well,
get a backup.
Well, I enjoyed having 2 guests on with us today, so no worries about that. And thank you everyone else for attending our final career development hours for fall semester. We hope to see some of you during our Tax Matters Q&A or the Teach for America webinar next week. Thanks everyone so much, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.